everybody. Welcome back to Eggs, the podcast. Today's special guest is Devo Tindall from the Brand Storyteller.com. Devo, how are you, man?
Good morning, Ryan, Mike. I'm great. Good to see you both.
Absolutely. Thrilled to death. We were talking a little bit before the show that you're out in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, hopefully all is well for you and yours. And, it sounded like maybe you were going to go do a little something for the hurricane effort here pretty quick. So that's very cool.
Yeah, we're safe here. The mountains are the ones that got destroyed. So, but here in Charlotte, we just got a lot of rain.
Yeah. Well, our listeners don't know this, but we've been trying to get you on for about a year now. We've had some scheduling issues and we kept getting punted back to the back of the calendar. And finally, here we are. Devo, do you want to tell people who you are, a little bit about what you do and your background?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, first of all, to be here. So I own a couple of different businesses. I'm a serial entrepreneur here in Charlotte, as we've talked about. My primary value that I bring to the planet right now is I help other entrepreneurs and CEOs build their business, starting with a brand foundation first and foremost, which is sort of everything that they believe about their business, the problems that they solve, the clients they want to work with, and really being able to crystallize that message so that when they show up in the marketing world, whether it's social media, their website, blogs, whatever they plan to do, they're very clear on the what they do first and foremost, but the value that they bring to the marketplace so they can connect with their ideal avatar, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, and even just since we first started talking or trying to get you on the show, the brand has evolved into this brand storyteller, which I think maybe we could use as a kickoff point to talk about, developing your story and figuring out your brand. I mean, you've just done the exercise for yourself, coming from I guess maybe a more traditional kind of marketing type agency to doing something hyper-focused on storytelling. Maybe you talk a little bit about your experience, and then we can talk further about how we would parlay that into our own companies.
Yeah, so I thought I wanted to be an agency owner, really is the long and short of it, and build an agency around, the core competencies that we brought. But as I got into that space, I realized that we were really we needed to reverse engineer what we were doing, and we were kind of muddying the waters with sort of an integration, if you will, of marketing first before branding. And I really realized once we really started diving in with working with clients in a coaching capacity, that most of them really hadn't taken the time to clarify what that brand foundation, that brand message was. And so if I may just educate, a lot of people think that branding is just something pretty. It's the visual assets of a company, right? Your logo, your website, you have a really cool glossy silk matted business card. And that is true. Those are part of your brand. But your brand is literally everything that your customer sees about your business, thinks or feels or tastes, right? So when you walk into a restaurant, how is it? How is the decor? What's the aesthetics look like? How are you greeted? Are they rude? Do they give you a table? Do they make you sit for 15 minutes before someone even says hello? Is there branding on the walls? Are the menus well done? Like all of those things that go into your experience, right? That's the brand. And so one of the things that we realize is that we were helping companies market, but when we got into the creating the marketing for them, we had to sort of go so far back into the story of their business that we're like, why are we starting with marketing with these companies when they haven't done this part first? And so through sort of like a trial and error of a couple of years of working with these clients, we realized that we needed to change the paradigm of our business operation. So we rebranded and changed our entire matrix, and now we brand first, and now we market second, and then sort of an ongoing integration of the two.
No, I think that's a great delineation that you're making there, and I think it's one of these things that people fall victim to all the time, right? There's a lot of, especially now with AI, and we can talk more about that in a little bit, but there's always been kind of a commoditization of design work, advertising, marketing, things like that, and they all kind of get lumped into one thing. And so this idea of brand, as you mentioned, is that people just think of brand as the logo. They don't think about the whole exploration that went into the logo. They don't understand the ethos of the company and why we chose the mark we did, and all these different things. So we get caught up in the aesthetic, but none of those soft things. And I think it's really important for people to understand that the brand is all those different touch points. And I think that for people like you and I and others in the industry, I think that there's a real good opportunity here. And this is where I think AI will fall short. So there's this idea that you can go to Fiverr.com or whatever, get a logo spun up, and maybe you can for, maybe for your business, maybe that works, maybe that's the kind of business you want to operate. So, but I think, while there's always been the $5 logo out there, I think there's always going to be a place for people who are high level thinkers, who are strategic thinkers, who are, seriously looking at all the different aspects of the brands. And I think that those will be the ones that are the ones that survive the test of time. And so I think through, even with AI and things like that, I think AI is going to continue to encourage this notion that you can just buy brand cheap. Now you can do it for free, basically, with ChatGPT or whatever. You can have it write a brand story for you. You can have it do all those things. But just like buying the $5 logo, those things don't really have that much to do with you, your business, the people you serve, none of that stuff. You can get ChatGPT to spin up a brand story for you or write a document that will make it sound like you know what you're talking about. But true brands and true brand stories come from, within. They come from the type of work you do. They come from the things that are important to the leadership, or whatever it is. And so I think making the delineation between just sort of the visual side of brand and the, more, I guess, intangible parts, I think is really wise. And I think that that's where you guys come in this storytelling sort of methodology versus, just being a shop that sits down and cranks out logos all day.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. A lot of what you said was really spot on. I think I'll go backwards first. So AI is a valuable tool, and I encourage anybody who is running a business that has a lot of minutia and a lot of repetitive things to help support that area. For example, I'm writing an ebook right now and really trying to cater it to something very specific and a very specific audience. So rather than trying to go in and like take all these copious notes about it myself, I can give it a sense of idea, a sense of parameters, some ideas. Like these are the things that I really want to flesh out. So can you take these and expound upon them, right? But actually taking those particular notes and then putting the meaty parts on them, the fleshy parts on them, the emotional touch on them, that has to be done by me. So I think that there is a time and a place to use AI, and I think that it's a powerful tool that can support your business. But when it comes to building a brand, and we've talked about some of the age-old ideas of what branding is, it's sort of connecting on an emotional level with your buyer and building that whole idea of know, like, trust, become a raving fan, right? And I think a lot of people think that just because they have this really cool idea and they built a website and they just expect people to come to them and they expect this instantaneous results, right? These instantaneous raving fans. And what I think a lot of early entrepreneurs fail to understand is that that's a matriculation over time, and people have to learn to trust you because there's a lot of people who do what I do, right? There's a lot of people who do what you do. So branding is that it factor, that je ne sais quoi. Like I like to sound like I know what I'm talking about when I say that. Like I don't actually know any French, but I did learn that term once. But branding is that it factor. It's that thing that separates you from everyone else, because not only does it help you understand and crystallize who you are and why you're showing up, but you ever seen that movie? What's his name? Bill Murray, Lost in Translation. Sort of like you always have this dialogue, and it's like nobody ever knows what you're saying. And so branding is the ability to take that, whatever it is you're doing, and speak to the right audience and connect with them emotionally. And AI is not going to be able to do that. It's only going to be able to support you. So another really cool analogy, because I'm big on analogies. My wife and I are getting ready to start this carnivore diet. I don't know if I'm into it or not, but we're getting ready to start it. And we just can't. Beef is expensive, man. Buying beef is crazy expensive, but good beef is even more expensive. So it's like, to borrow your analogy, yeah, you could use AI to create your business plan and write up social media for you. But if you want a good fucking steak, man, you got to like go straight to the farm. It's like no hormones, no bullshit in it. It's like straight, been pasture raised. So we bought ourselves a whole cow, by the way, that's getting delivered on Friday. So we know what good steak tastes like. And so we went out and we created this experience so that we could actually have this. And so that's what branding does, is it enables you to create that experience with your buyer and then connect with them on an emotional level. Does that all make sense?
No, I think that's right. And I mean, steak is a great example, but I mean, everything down to your shoes, right? I mean, there's the Payless version of a shoe that you can buy for $5 that will get you by. Right? It's a shoe. It goes on your foot, protects your feet from, pokey things. But, then there's also the, I don't know, $1,000 Jordan, whatever, the cool fancy sneaker of the moment that's out there. It's still just a shoe. At the end of the day, it still just protects your feet. But, there's something else to it, right? And what it is brand. I mean, it's all those intangibles. It's, I'm going to look cool. It's the history of Nike. It's the history of Jordan as, the best athlete ever or whatever. It's like all these things that make that shoe worth $1,000. It's not the, I mean, the Payless shoe doesn't have the same je ne sais quoi. And so it's so I think that brand, as we talk about it, even in the form of beef, I mean, there is a version of cheap cruddy beef that's been highly processed, that eats horrible food, that you can get that version of steak and it will be cheaper. But in your case, you guys are going to be living off of this, and if you're going to be eating poor steak, you're not going to thrive.
100%.
And so you guys can make an educated decision that, what, this is an area where we need to invest. And so in this case, you're buying into the cow's brand that he's been eating grass-fed, and somehow that's better.
That's great what you said. And another way to reframe that, if you want to look at it from an alternative perspective, which is what I always encourage everyone to do, is, you heard the saying, perception is reality, right? So it's really important to understand, what does your audience think about your business, right? Are you, and again, if you're cool with just like sort of being like a low level, just provide just basic service, then, you probably don't want to spend a whole lot of time and money on your brand. I could argue that even if you're a low line and low economic ticket, and your revenue model sort of just follows like quantity over quality, you're still going to need a brand message. But the most important part is like understanding, what does your buyer think about you, and then building your product, if it doesn't fit what you think it does, making sure that those two are in line with what you're trying to do to grow your business.
So yeah. I'm listening to a book right now called Never Play It Safe by Chase Jarvis. He's a photographer out of Seattle. And he was talking on a podcast the other day that I listened to, and he was talking about, as a photographer, what sets apart the $50 photo and the $50,000 photo. Why is one considered worth $50,000, but it's kind of close for, the $50 one, but what separates the two? And in his reply in the podcast, he said, literally, it's the person sitting across the table. The person who's buying the photo determines if it's the $50,000 photo or if it's the $50 photo, and what their perceived value of you as a photographer is. And that, I think, comes directly to branding and what branding can do to set apart your, in my world, the $500 DJ or the $5,000 DJ. Where do I want to be on that spectrum, and how do I get myself there? I like how in your preface, when you first started talking, you mentioned the restaurant, and did it make me sit for 10 minutes? Did I have this experience? With the brand, it goes down to, there's so many nuances that come into play, that your core values, your mission statement, all these things that matter to you, that, and like you were talking about, like, what do your actual clients think of you? What are the really important things that you might not pay attention to, that stand out? And maybe you can expound on like defining your core values, and adapting to like maybe market trends.
Yeah, great question. The restaurant pieces are always a powerful tool, because we all go out to restaurants, and I always sort of think my wife and I would love to visit new restaurants, because Charlotte has a new restaurant, I swear, that opens up every other day. It's insane. I've never seen anything like it. I don't understand how these people can stay in business, just to be honest with you. Like, do we all eat out that much that there's this many restaurants? But, yeah. We went into a restaurant the other day, just to kind of hammer that point home, Mike, and it was poorly aesthetically decorated. The food was average. The service was worse. But our ticket was like way up here. And my first comment was, man, if they're charging for this type of food, they better get all the rest of this stuff built up fast, because it's just not, it just doesn't support. Whereas, if you go to a really nice restaurant and they give you the ticket and you're like, holy shit, that was worth every single penny I spent. Right. Anyhow, so I'll get off that topic. How do we define all the things that ultimately create our client's perception? Well, there's different ways to do it, and you might hear different things from different people. Personally, what we do is, with every client, we go through a really structured brand discovery process. And that's really kind of akin to you coming into if I was a psychologist, if you ever gone to a therapist, and just kind of laying down on the sofa, and we have very specific types of questions that we ask. They're 2 and 3 day workshops at these discovery sessions. And in that process, we use part psychological assessment tests, our own internal process that we have developed over the years, and then just sort of getting to know who the client is and all the different pieces. And then we take all of that and then we aggregate it into sort of a brand we call it the brand blueprint, which really defines all these pieces. But what it really does is it helps us so we can coach them properly, because I need to know who you are, right? What do you do, so that I can manage that with you effectively. But it also gives you a picture, just to sound cliche, but it gives your brand a North Star. So these are the things that we're building to, right? These are our visions. These are our values. These are our missions. These are all the things. These are our assets. This is our strategy. These are all the things that we're trying to build. This is our brand personality. This is our brand essence. All of those things are not just words. When you see them in front of you on paper and they sort of start to become like a Google map for you, you're not only able to live them, but you're able to talk them properly. So because you combine them with the social strategy, for example, or you combine them with well-written copy for your website, or you combine them with the blogs that you're putting out, or all those different things, whether you're showing up on blogs or podcasts like this. So, I could say all these things about my business and what I think, but then I show up on your podcast and I can't even talk my way out of a box to you. It's like, that's your brand message, man. And so what we do helps people articulate that so they can clearly understand it and live that message. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Makes complete sense.
Yeah, I think that's really useful. One thing I'd like to talk about with you. So predominantly the people who listen to this show are entrepreneurs. They're small business owners. We have some CEOs and things like that, but a lot of the people are sort of just getting started or maybe in their own business. Over the 6 years we've been doing this, I've sort of identified these two different paths of entrepreneurs. We've got the ones that are sort of starting businesses for passion, and we've got the ones that are starting businesses that are very tactical. Right. And I'll sort of describe those as the person who's doing it in passion. That's the guy who does this trade. He'd do it forever for free. And then eventually that kind of evolves into a business. Right. So I don't know, the painter who decides to paint professionally or something. Then you've got your tactical guys that are like, okay, well, I can see that there's an opening on Amazon to sell some supplement. I'm going to start selling that supplement. I don't really care that much about my brand. I don't care about anything. I just have a product and it fits this hole that I've identified. So those two different people, I think, tell two different stories. And I think that story, at least as we're talking about it here as it pertains to brand, I think could be equally important to each of them. But I think each of those business owners puts a different spin on it. So your passionate guy, the person who's, chasing his labor of love, that person seems to me like they might be more naturally fit into this idea that, they could really benefit from telling their story. And it's how compelling their story is that will actually endear people to them and all that stuff. Where the tactical guys are a little bit more vapid. They're a little bit more, hey, we're just doing this thing. We're just trying to do, make some cash, and we're not really putting any thought to it. So as you're starting to approach, different customers, or people come to you and say, oh, well, we're trying to take our brand to the next level. We kind of buy into your story or your premise that, storytelling is important to our businesses. How would you sort of address, each of these different business types versus maybe, transforming a company that already exists? Like, how do you help people uncover what it is that, that's actually important in a company? And I guess, I don't know if we're trying to move people out of sort of vapid money grab type businesses, or maybe it's fine that they live there. But how would you approach like these different types of entrepreneurs as they come to you?
So I just want to clarify. I heard you say two different avatars. There's a purpose-driven CEO, somebody who tactically approaches business, realizes that they're inherently able to solve a specific problem in the marketplace, and then bring that to market. That's avatar one. And then avatar two, how I interpreted that, was just sort of a hobbyist, a starving artist that really kind of like just dabbles here and there.
Yeah, I would put that second one maybe just a little bit further along than that. Like, they're actually in business, but they're just doing the thing they love. They learned the trade of welding, and now they've got a welding business, right? That kind of thing. So they're not necessarily hobbyists. They could have a fully realized business, but the reason they got into business is more about passion or a love for what they're doing versus somebody who's just getting into the line of work because they've identified some product market fit and they're just jumping into it.
I like your line of questioning. So thank you for actually taking the time to give a F and ask real questions. I appreciate that. How would I approach them both in terms of me being their coach and managing their business? I think first and foremost, we need to understand why they're in business in the first place, and have some clarity and better understanding on why they're in category A or why they're in category B, because ultimately both of them are taking time, energy, and money, resources from their own life to do something out of this space, right? So are they here to make an impact? Are they here to just be a creative? Are they here to change people's lives? I would clearly want to start the same direction with both of them just so I could understand what are my operating metrics here that I'm working from, right? Does that make sense? So are you a podcaster because you make podcasting money? Like, do you have a revenue model in place, you and Mike? Or do you guys just do this because you're cool dudes and you love talking to cool people like me, right? So understanding that first and foremost, like, why are you here? What brings you to the table is the first conversation that needs to be had, right? Because that's going to really paint the picture on what type of strategy is going to go into their business. And maybe they always want to do that, but in that conversation, when you have real conversations with real people, and I was just talking about this morning on a podcast as well, when you take the time to have real conversations with people and you listen first and foremost, and not come at it from like, I'm going to try to change your life or give you all these ideas. I just want to sort of hear, like, why are you here, Ryan? Why are you and Mike podcasting? What is it that you set out to do when you first had this juicy, audacious idea? Are you looking to build this into a podcasting empire? Do you want to set up a franchise? Do you want to set up all those different things are going to define what the strategy is? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then,
and I actually love how you've answered this, by the way. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no.
Sort of the intention behind that question is, I think we get a lot of people who are sort of on either side of that fence, and there's all shades of gray of entrepreneur out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but with these two sort of primary verticals, but your response to them is the same. Each of them need to come to the table and tell you about why they're doing what they're doing, right? And so what I love about that, and what I was hoping to try and illustrate, and you did perfectly, which is that no matter how you feel as an entrepreneur, we're not really all that different. And especially as it pertains to managing brand and things like that, like brand is brand. Like, it doesn't matter if you went into business as, for tactics, or if you're chasing a labor of love, at the end of the day, we still need to understand your why and all that stuff. So I thought it was a good point to show that, even if you feel disparate, like, really your business is going to experience the same challenges.
Do you want to show up with Payless sneakers? Do you want to show up with some J's?
I got some comfortable Payless sneakers. Like,
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with those, Mike. Like, I used to wear. You guys laugh at this. True story. My first pair. I grew up in a poor ass family, man. I'm one of 12 kids. I never had my own pair of sneakers in my entire life. My first pair of real sneakers that was ever bought for me was bought by my football coach when I stepped off the airplane to go to college.
Wow.
Before that, I had hand-me-downs from my brother, so I know all about the Payless. and it's kind of funny because, people talk about the psychology and the pathology of your life when you become an adult. And it's like, fuck, there's a lot of unresolved trauma way back there that I haven't dealt with now. So I get the Payless reference. But again, like, how do you want to show up in the world, Mike? Do you want people to know you as Payless Mike, or do you want people to know as like Air Jordan Mike? Like, that's really... And once you sort of understand that about yourself, like you've taken the time to be introspective, like, I'm cool with just doing this as a hobby, or I'm cool with this just sort of like welding all day long and giving out, my help. Dude, that's totally cool, man. Like, I honor you. But if you want to make money and you want to build a business and you want to like really capitulate upon this concept that you've come up with, then you're going to have to put a little more energy into it. Different types of resources go into it, right? So there is no one size that fits all when it comes to branding or marketing at all either. It's like, there's no boilerplate to like how to run your business. This is my business. These are the things that I do really well. And now let's come up with a strategy that can take all of those by meeting you where you are and then expanding upon that so that you can ultimately achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I like that.
And I think it dovetails into what you were saying earlier, Mike, the difference between the $5,000 DJ and the $500 DJ, right? It's not necessarily shoes, right? But it's, and it's not even really about, being flashy or spending money, right? But it is about understanding who you are and what you're worth and all, all these other factors too. So I think, the shoes is a lightweight metaphor for it, but it's exactly.
Well, let's stick with this example, the DJ world, right? There are DJs out there that will show up in a tuxedo and they will be the guy that they think that people want. And you know what? No offense to them. If they want to show up in a tuxedo and DJ in a tuxedo at a wedding, good on them. I wear Adidas tennis shoes and kind of nice slacks and a button-up shirt because I am not the center of attention at a wedding. The bride and groom are. And that's kind of my thought in regards to that. And I'm also working. I'm setting up speakers. I'm working all day. You can't really do manual physical labor in a tuxedo. So that's kind of my personal opinion on that.
Unless you do one of those tuxedo T-shirt things, you can do one of those, maybe. So,
but what I'm
or
getting
go full
at
Terry
is
Crews and take the sleeves off. You can do either one.
Is my show performance, whatever, my equipment, my gear, and my 30 years of experience doing weddings is what sets me apart from the guy that's going to show up with a cheesy generic system, basic lights, but he'll put the tuxedo on and be that guy because he thinks that's who they want him to be. And no, shade thrown to the guys that do that. Do you, if you want to be the tuxedo guy, be the tuxedo guy. But I guess what I'm getting at is like, let's go to the authentic. There's the performative authenticity that people sometimes do that is just fake and they're just trying to play a role. And to me, that doesn't feel right. Maybe can you expound on that a little bit about being yourself and being what you want to be and letting your customers come to you and instead of chasing what you think other people want?
Good question. No, I'm just trying to figure out. There's so many different ways I can address this. So, I think first and foremost, if you are being inauthentic in any way, shape, or form, your customer is going to very quickly figure that out. We're really savvy buyers today. We have so much information at our disposal, from Google reviews to social media to websites to speaking to customers to sort of just watching how things unfold. Because again, most people don't buy right away anymore anyhow. They're sort of shopping things around, right? And the average buyer, I think the 14 touch points now is on the customer journey. That's up from like 9 that used to be 7, which used to be 3, right? Because we have so many options that are available to us, whether it's from Amazon or eBay or going to a grocery store. Like, I was at the grocery store yesterday. I don't do a lot of grocery shopping. I was just buying a simple thing like toothpaste. There's like 142 different toothpastes out there now. So it's like we have information overload. So if you're being inauthentic about who you are in your delivery, whether you're a tuxedo or whether you wear a tuxedo or not, you still have to have like skills, man. Like, you still have to have value. Like, no matter how good I look on paper, no matter how good or dressed up I am on my tuxedo, like, if you can't play music and be a DJ and get the crowd on the dance floor or whatever it is that you bring to the table as a DJ, whether you're an MC more than a DJ more than an MC, I don't know what that is, but your audience is going to very quickly figure that out. And they're not going to recommend you to the next person that they meet when someone says, hey, I need a DJ. They're not going to think of Mike Smith, whether you're wearing a tuxedo or not. I want to pause there because there is sort of an insert at that. Now, assuming Mike Smith, the DJ, who does not wear a tuxedo, is really fucking good, but he's noticing in his business that he's not attracting the right type of customer that he actually wants to work with, then there's a play to be made at that point to take a look at your brand and the message you're delivering. Are you cool with doing the types of gigs you've been getting historically up to this point? Or do you want to work at, like, I'll just use the Biltmore as an example out here. The Biltmore is like the cream de la cream of getting weddings, and like celebrities get married there and all these like big timers get there. And if you want to move into that world, they're going to expect you to step up your game in terms of your wardrobe. Does that make sense? So you have to decide, what does my brand bring to the world? What's my value? How do I want to show up? How do I want my customer to receive that? And if I'm not cool with the type of person I'm attracting right now, I need to take a look at my brand and my messaging so that I can better understand, are there ways that I can improve what I'm doing to attract a different type of audience? Does that make sense so far?
That does.
And in terms of, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and in regards to, so like I do a lot of vineyards. I work in a area where, it's kind of real casual. It's not, the Biltmore. It's not, these. It's the vibe that I enjoy, and so that's kind of my market that I go for. And in fact, the Biltmores and the kind of the bookends of that equation for me are the clients and the people that I actually tend to avoid, because when you get to the Biltmores, you become less of they kind of put like those type of events. They're the ones that they put you in a closet and give you a paper bag lunch and say, here's your peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I don't like that. And so that's kind of it's kind of me being specific of where I want to be versus, it kind of puts me in my own niche, and I'm totally fine with that. I get the dollar amount that I want and I get what I want out of it, and I don't have to wear the tuxedo. So it's perfect for me. But for other people, it might be what they want. They might want the peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the closet. It's just not my kind of thing.
Yeah. And those are your values that you've just described. These are the values that I want out of my experience with the type of customer I want to work with the type of things that matter to me. And so you've defined several key parts of your brand right there. But as it pertains to the inauthenticity that you were just talking about, again, the same thing I go back to. You're not going to last very long in a world filled with people who can clearly understand and see right through that stuff. And if you don't have, what's the name of I saw a statistic that I don't watch a lot of sports anymore, but I saw a statistic that the last 50 years or something of the NFL, the number one drafted quarterback ended up being like a flop within like 2 seasons. It was some crazy number. It was like 60 or 70% of these people. And they just sort of found out that, they weren't designed for the NFL game. They just didn't have the size. They didn't have the intelligence. Like there was a whole bunch of different factors that went into it. And sort of like goes back to what your question is. Do you want to play in the pros, or are you cool with just being a badass in college? Big fish, little pond, little fish, big pond. Like, what do you want out of this in terms of your business? So if you're going to play in the big boys league put the big boy pants in the NFL, man, you sure as fuck better have some authentic skills to back that up, or you're not going to last 3 seconds, right? And so it's the same thing goes in business. Like if you, depending upon what market you want to play in, and you can clearly define that market, just understand, what does the market expect of me? And if I'm not showing up authentically to match the market vibe, you're not going to be in business, and you're going to get relegated to the minors really quickly. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the example that keeps coming to mind is somebody, and I don't want to put her on blast, so I won't use her name. I'll just use kind of a first initial, P. Hilton. She took a stab at DJing. And, I don't know, maybe she still does. I don't know. But I remember early on, like, a big facet of the thing was that this person, who we won't say her name out loud, because we don't want to blast her. She would show up to these events and get paid exorbitant amounts of money to be the DJ for the night, right? But she was literally pressing a button, or she had somebody else running the equipment while she was there. And it was really more about being in the same room as her than it was about the music. But anybody who actually cared about a club scene or any of that other stuff, they're not going to see her. Mm-hmm. Right. So as it pertains to authenticity and all that kind of stuff, in her case, she didn't have the skill to be like considered an amazing DJ. Now, granted, I'm going off old stuff. I don't pay attention to her. Maybe she's a great DJ now. I have no idea.
Yeah, you just totally dated yourself, by the way, right?
No, for sure. Yeah, everybody's like,
that's the first Paris Hilton reference I've heard in at least 15 years.
Yeah.
No, wait, we were supposed to say her name. P. Hilton, sorry.
No, that's okay. It's all right. People have put it together. I try to be sneaky. I think, and for all I know, she could be a very prolific DJ these days. But I just remember when it was first going on, I remember just kind of that notion, and there were a bunch of them at the time, sort of these celebrity DJs that were going around, and it was just some guy you saw in a movie, but now he's a DJ, or, and not everybody is all that good at it. And so in terms of being authentic, they're showing up as a personality. And so maybe that's how they're drawing the big money, but they're definitely lacking the skills as a DJ. So if you try and, put any of these people into the DJ bucket and try and compare yourself to them, there's going to be a shortfall in their skills versus somebody like Mike, who's basically dedicated his whole career to being good at that.
Yeah.
Now Mike is not cute nor blonde nor any of those things. So I don't know how he's going to pull it off in the same way. But he's nothing if he's not authentic. And for people who know Mike, I mean, Mike is Mike. And so like, you'll love him, you'll hate him, you'll respect him for who he is. And, you'll know that if you hire him to do your event, he's going to bring it. And, and his Adidas aren't going to matter that much because he's going to be the right guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, but to your point, earlier, Devo, they just, that may be fine for his audience, right? Yeah. Maybe it isn't enough if he wants to play in the bigger leagues. But
it's not even the bigger leagues.
With his values, maybe
it's not even necessarily the bigger leagues. It's just the different leagues, right? Like maybe bigger to him is the audience that he's playing in. So you just have to be really clear on like, what are my values and how do I want to be perceived? And am I matching up to the perception of my, let me rephrase that. Am I exceeding the perception of my intended audience? Right. And so there's a whole bunch of different ways to go about that. But, if Mike, if you haven't done this already, one way to figure out if you're sort of leveling up or exceeding is start querying the people that, I'm sure you do this as you're a businessman, start querying the people for feedback on your experience with Mike. And you can start to see really quickly the trends. If there's any gaps, you can start to quickly see what do people think about Mike? Is anybody truly offended that you're not wearing a suit? Do people think that you talk too much? I'm just throwing stuff out. Do people think their music is outdated? I don't even know, but you'll very quickly get an understanding of here's what I think of myself as Mike the DJ, but here's what my audience that I think is my ideal audience thinks. And then you can start to fill in those gaps really quickly.
Yeah, I've done periods of time where I would send, post-event recaps like what would you recommend I could do better, and so on and so forth. And you'd get one of two responses. You'd get the people who loved you and the people who just hated everything about everything. And then of course they're just going to be, sad about it, whatever. Whether it's me or if it's the photographer or the wedding planner, they just didn't like anything. So you just can't win on those clients.
And I think for a lot of people too, I mean, especially with something like a survey, I mean, you're generally getting the people who are really thrilled or who are really pissed for one reason or another. I mean, I know for me personally, the only time I ever write reviews is one of those situations. If I'm over the top thrilled with a place, I want everyone to know. If I was way underwhelmed with a place, I need everyone to know that too. And so, but there's not a lot of middle ground. Like, oh, well, Mike was pretty good. That's it. Pretty good.
Well,
there's not a lot of that guy leaving surveys probably.
Usually I can tell. I mean, and to be honest with you, I think I might have had one gig in the last 20 years where the bride or groom hasn't been happy with me. And that was actually extenuating circumstances. They were, Asian, and the music that they were requesting was in like the crazy fonts that I can't read. How am I going to know what, there's so many moving parts, and I was thrown into that gig last minute, and it was like kind of a, the term bridezilla. It was one of those, and she had driven off her other DJ, and I said yes when I should have said no. And in that regards, that was on me. I should have been able to discern the client and picked better. But that, to be honest with you, that's the only bad experience I've had as far as a client interaction, pretty much in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And those they happen. It is what it is. You just got to let it roll over and kind of go on. But I don't know. I'm very specific about my brand. On Tick is my DJ name. The whole thing for On Tick is on time. I show up to weddings. If the wedding starts at 4, I'm there at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I get the sound system worked in and dialed up and lights going and everything. I'll have a 3-hour break afterwards, but I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there on time, and we're going to, do things right. And so it's kind of I'm very specific about my brand, but I'm not going to be the guy that's in the tuxedo or that's going to go to the point where I do me. And if you don't like me, then you, yeah. Anyways, I'm rambling.
No, yeah. And I wasn't suggest that you go query every person at the event. You should be querying the stakeholders is what I was suggesting. The people who are paying your dollar, the venue, getting, whether it's the venue, whether it's the caterer. It's interesting to sort of, when you build relationships with those type of people, people are very inclined to give feedback in that regard. That's where I was going with that.
Well, and the best feedback you can get is a referral. And
that's feedback. Yeah, exactly.
I haven't done any marketing in a long time, where I'm actually pursuing people and my calendar stays full. So
it's a good indicator.
That says something.
So I wanted to touch on something, Devo, that you were talking about a moment ago. You said it kind of flippantly, but I think it's actually maybe something worth exploring, which is this idea of sort of how you see yourself versus how others see you. And I also wanted to sort of pair with that sort of how much you should bend to accommodate what people think of you versus how much you should stay true to yourself. So I guess if I was going to frame this as a question, it would be, how do we make good use or make good understanding of, the difference between how we see ourselves. So how Mike sees himself versus how other people see Mike.
I'm right.
Or
that's
anybody, for that example. And, and then to what extent, or, if you're coaching somebody, to what extent would you encourage somebody to chase the feedback that they're getting, and basically accommodate, maybe if they're getting, I don't know, Mike, you should always wear Nikes instead of Adidas. Everybody hates Adidas right now. So, I mean, do we need to bend to that kind of feedback or not? So authenticity versus bending to the demand, and understanding the difference between how we see ourselves and how others see us.
I would suggest that we reverse engineer that. How important is it to you, first and foremost, that your perception is in alignment with how you perceive yourself? And are you willing to take feedback from people because you might have a diluted version of who you actually are? So it's really important to sort of understand, and this is called shadow work, if you really want to go deep about this, down this rabbit hole, is have you taken the time to do some shadow work about yourself so that you can really understand? You asked me who I was at the outset of the call, and like, I don't really know. Am I a creator? Am I a photographer? Am I a videographer? Am I a storyteller? There's all a bunch of different things that I am, but at the end of the day, who do I want to be to the people that are paying me to do something for them, right? And so part of that equation is, I'm just going to use my wife and I as an example. So my wife and we're a blended family, right? And I have 2 kids from my own that are biologically mine. I've raised them since they were babies. Their mother hasn't been in their life since they were 5 and 3, respectively. My wife has 3 children whose original husband has not been in their life since, maybe going back 15 years now, I guess. So we've suddenly combined these families, and we have drastically different parenting styles, right? And as much as we love each other, and my wife's probably going to get pissed that I'm talking about this, we haven't aligned on some of our parenting styles and our values, if you will, like what's really important to each other. And that doesn't make either one of us right or either one of us wrong. We just really aren't aligned up with it, right? So we started proactively going to therapy to sort of figure out how can we mitigate this and be in better alignment with each other. Because at the end of the day, I want to be your partner. She wants to be my partner. I want to go to bed with you at night. I want to live my life with you. Like there's my values. So what's most important to me is like the relationship with my wife. So what we discovered in this process is that it wasn't really a matter of us lining up together as a couple. We were trying to argue our narrative on what we thought about ourselves and what was more important to us, right? And so to answer your question, I would look at it from a different perspective. How can I reverse engineer that? I would want to know, is my perception of myself matching up with A, the reality of other people, and if not, where are the gaps? But B, how important is it to me? What do I ultimately want out of this? Do I want to show up as Mike, the cigar slinging, guitar over my shoulder, boots, hat backwards, badass motherfucker DJ? Or am I willing to sort of take a few of those pieces off because it might be offending a few people? So am I willing to back down on some of my values with my wife? Because ultimately all I really care about is my relationship with her, right? And so maybe I'm fucking up that relationship with her because I'm not aware of my own shadows, because I think I'm so right about who I am, and I'm not willing to sort of like decloak some of that. Does that make sense? And so I quickly decided that it's not so much that I am right about my parenting. I could be completely wrong on my parenting. After all, I did grow up one of 12 children with some crazy ass parents, so that named me Devo. So it's like, those weed smoking hippies might not actually know much about parenting, which is where I learned how to parent. So like, I have to sort of it's like self therapy work, self psychology work, and shadow work. Like, you have to understand, what am I willing to negotiate in my risk reward ratio, that I show up as this person, or do I want to show up as this person, or am I willing to sort of make some compromises about myself and like some of the things? Does that make sense? I'm not trying to like be wishy-washy, but I don't think it's just a simple answer. It's like, and it's not really that you're being inauthentic. If Mike chooses to put on a tuxedo, that doesn't mean that he's being inauthentic per se. It just means that maybe he wants to just explore, because maybe Mike doesn't know what Mike doesn't know. And maybe wearing a tuxedo might actually make him be a better DJ just because he gets hotter girls looking at him. I don't fucking know. Like, whatever his value is, right? And so when you're deciding what you're willing to give and what you're willing to trade off, you do have to understand what's in it for you, but you also have to understand that there are other people that are playing in your ethos. Like, there's other people in that ecosystem. So how are you triggering or affecting that as well? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Obviously, client, if I had someone come to me and say, hey, we want you to DJ our event, but, I've seen you at previous events and you just aren't, dressing up to the occasion. If the occasion mandated that I wear a suit or a tuxedo, if I'm doing I used to have clients like Swift Transportation and the Phoenix Suns and bigger clients like that. If I'm going into that world that requires me to wear a Phoenix Sun jersey because I'm playing at that event, I'm going to put the Phoenix Sun jersey on. But I'm not going to per se, like enjoy wearing that suit and tie when I'm sweating and trying to move a speaker around and all that stuff. It's like, there's that balance in between the two. You have to, like, if you're going to be wearing the ball cap at the wedding, you have to get that kind of cleared beforehand. Like lots of times in my booking process, I'll ask, what are you looking for it for your event? Do you want formal? Do you want casual? Do you want this? Do you want that? Can I show up in jeans and a t-shirt? Each gig is different. You just have to be willing to accommodate and make changes and clear that beforehand. Me personally, I like where I'm at right now, and so I'm not pursuing those clients. But
yeah, you would just have to make a decision. Am I willing to put on a tuxedo? And if I'm willing to put on a tuxedo, maybe I'm going to charge a little bit more, or maybe I'm just going to ask for. I'm not going to wear it until the gig actually starts. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of subtleties and nuances that go into that. Yeah. I don't think it makes you inauthentic that you're wearing a tuxedo now. What I would think would make you inauthentic is that you showed up with the tuxedo and then you're telling everybody else they should also wear tuxedos, or you showed up and you pretended to be this amazing DJ like Hilton and just really couldn't mix a deck. Like those are the things that are going to make you inauthentic. And just because you're leveling up to some extent, I don't really feel like that makes you stepping outside of your wheelhouse. I think it just sort of makes you adaptive and a bit nimble.
Yeah, I think that's actually the better point here is that, or maybe not the better point, but a point about this is that it's not about inauthenticity. It's about flexibility. Yeah. Right. Reading the room. Yeah. So, in this case, you need to do this thing or you have to wear a suit. I mean, God knows I wear the same black t-shirt every day of my life, but on occasion I have to put on a collar. It's a black collar, but it's, but nonetheless, I'll put on a collared shirt. Yeah. So, but it doesn't happen often, but if I'm going to a nice dinner, I'll dress up. If I'm going, to, the theater or whatever, we'll dress up. Or like if my wife wants to dress up, then I have to level up a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't change who I am at my core, which is somebody who really wants to just wear my black t-shirt every day. Instead, it's a flexibility. I'm willing to, read the room or meet her in the middle on those things. Absolutely. So, and I think as your brand goes, there's some room for that. And I think maybe we kind of got off topic, but I wanted to go back to Mike's question earlier about chasing trends. And when you're writing a story or you're trying to build an authentic brand around storytelling, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing to really chase what's happening day to day versus just kind of sticking to the story you've written?
Stick to your story, but if there are things within the trend that can actually benefit you, that you find to be valuable, then look at them to see how you can integrate them without just copying what everyone else does, right? So that's how I would go. Chasing trends, they're fickle, they fade out really quickly, they're not timeless, they're not classic. What's really timeless and classic is the value that you bring to the table. How are you serving your audience? What problem are you solving? And if you can go at solving that problem consistently but still wear a suit just to match the trend, and that doesn't really hamper you any, then I say go for it. But that's a case-by-case decision. It's not really like something that says, oh, I'm against all trends, because there might be some value in some trends. Like let's just take Instagram, for example. I've been noticing that they're starting to play a lot more house music in the trend capacity. I happen to like house music. I think it's really cool. So maybe I'll be like, hey, I like that song. If I'm going to use the song, and maybe I'll play with that song. But I'm not going to go out there just to be like, okay, this song is the one that's trending this week, so we have to make sure we use it. That's just not my style. That might be someone else's style. If that works for you, go do your thing, man. I always tell people, you do you, I'll do me. But if I'm staying true to my brand and really telling who I am in my story, that's not how I look. That's not how I taste. That's not how I smell. I've built my reputation on sort of being a rebel, a little bit of a renegade. Like I curse a lot on podcasts. You've heard me do that. I had somebody once tell me, dude, you can't ever drop the F-bomb. I'm like, it's just a fucking word, man. Like, get over yourself. Like, I'm just going to that's my style, man. And that's who I am. And there are some people who love that. And some people are like, I don't want anything to do with that. So I have to decide, am I willing to bend myself so that I never drop an F-bomb just because there's a group over here that gets offended by it? And for me, that's not one of my values. So I stick to myself.
And I think there's a point there too. I mean, that one of the things that I think we often forget, especially if we're going into business or we're trying to appeal to a certain group of people, I think social media sort of exacerbates this a little bit, where we feel like we're talking to a lot of people. I think we have outsized judgment on how far our voice is going. Mm-hmm. And I think we don't realize how easy, or I guess it goes back to the idea that plenty of fish in the sea, right? I mean, there is a partner, business sense. There is a person who wants to use your business. There's a person who will appreciate your language. There's a person who thinks that's the kind of vibe that they want. Maybe they run a stuffy business and they want a guy like Devo. I mean, there's people for everybody. And I think sometimes we get caught up in this thing. And maybe if you're like a small business and you're trying to cater to a certain community, it's one thing. But, generally speaking, you can bring whoever you are and there is an audience for you. It might take you a little more work to find it. Like you're going to have to be a little more specific about how you're looking, who you're looking for. But I think you can come as you are. And I think you can find opportunity as you are. And, like we've discussed at length, I mean, there's plenty of, bending and shaping and adapting and learning and things like this that you can do to chase one path or another. But I think like a guy like Devo here and, I mean, Mike and I, we're pretty good on the podcast because we're, professionals around here. But at the same time, in our private lives, we're not as clean. And, I think we, there's room for all of us at the table, right? And so if somebody decides that, they're offended by Devo's language, well, truth be told, that's probably not a great customer for Devo. Same for me. If they don't like my earrings or they don't like, the band I like or whatever it is, or if they don't like Mike showing up in his Adidas, I mean, that's fine. Like, it's, back to your point about you do you, like, it's that, right? It's like, I can still do business. I can find people who align with me and my values. I can find, so to the idea of chasing a trend or whatever, I think you build your story, you stick to your story because your story is you. And, the audience will sort itself out. The people who are drawn to you will come to you and the people who don't won't. And that'll be okay. And you should probably be okay with it.
Absolutely. 100% agree with everything you just said. It's a process, first of all. So understanding how you can show up, if you're just to use social media as an example, social media is mostly an echo chamber. The algorithm is built that way. So if you want to play in that sandbox, first of all, know and understand that that's what it looks like. So most of the people that follow you are going to be the people that agree with you. So if you're just like following what everybody else says, you're not standing out in any way, shape, or form. So how do you step outside that paradigm of the echo chamber? Well, here's how you do it. You show up genuinely with a problem-solving serve first perspective and then work and talk to those people exclusively. And the people will find you. 7.5 billion people on the planet. There's somebody out there that's going to like your content, your copy, your perspective, if you can just genuinely show up every time with some sort of a value, whether it's educating, entertaining, inspiring, or all of the above.
Yeah, well, and this is where I think that the AI discussion gets really interesting, is that, and maybe AI is going to continue to get better. Obviously it will. And maybe they'll get better at doing this kind of thing. But I think what makes humans unique among having sort of these AI overlords hanging around is that part of what works in business and in life and everything is kind of having an opinion and bringing something to the table. So to this notion of authenticity, it's, you showing up as you actually gives you a superpower over the AI, who is basically an amalgamation of all the knowledge on the internet or whatever. So they might know things, the AI could pull stuff up, but the AI doesn't have lived experience. The AI doesn't have your upbringing. The AI doesn't have, your built-in unresolved trauma. It doesn't have any of those things. And so, yes, it can spin up a story, but will that story, like when you really come, push to shove, will it resonate with a human audience? Maybe it will on superficial levels and things like that. But I suspect if you built your whole brand on AI, you'd find it pretty hollow at the end.
Oh yeah, it'll be vapid. There's no soul to it. There's no essence to it.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of our unique characteristic, and eventually maybe we'll get to a place where we can fake it with AI, but I think for now, humans still have the market on that.
Yeah, when it becomes sentient, like John Connor.
Right. Yeah, but even that guy, pretty vapid. He was just trying to kill robots, and the robots are trying to take over the world. I mean, come on, like how deep is that?
He had his own brand. He was just known for that guy.
Well, I guess, but like, what's your why, man? Like what? You destroy the planet, so what? You have nowhere to be? Like, I mean, what's your why? So...
I like the what's your why question, but I also like to add a few pieces to that because I think your what matters, and I think the problem that you solve also matters. I don't think just having a North Star is great, but if you don't ever actually step out into the marketplace and do anything with your why and live a little bit more from a risk perspective and connecting with people, then your why is pointless. It just sort of sits there and you can look at it all day long. But if I've never done anything with it, then it doesn't solve all my problems.
Yeah, it's totally valid. And the product, and the problem you're trying to solve, right? I mean, go back to our Terminator analogy. I mean, okay, those robots kill off all the people. Okay, now what? Like you're just a bunch of robots sitting on a planet. Like who cares? Well, so it's like, so what's the problem you're actually trying to solve here? I mean, it's like,
because they're just waiting for Neo at that point.
Exactly. See, they just need
that's their why.
Now there's a
but
movie
they're
combination that would
crazy,
be
and
interesting.
Matrix meets Terminator.
Yeah.
Hey, if Predator versus Alien can work, why not? I think.
All right, we just have our new project, fellas.
Let's make it happen.
So, yep, we said it here first. So if that happens, somebody's paying for it. So, although we'll be able to use AI to write the movie, probably.
That's fun.
So Devo, we're kind of getting to that time. Do you want to tell people where they can reach out and get in touch with you if they have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, all the social media channels. I play on Instagram. That's kind of my sandbox. My business coach says I need to get on Twitter X, but I really don't have time for all of them. My website is brandstoryteller.com. That's the best place to find me, or on Instagram, Devo the Brand Storyteller. And that's probably the best thing to do.
I've made it to the very end, and I haven't said the Whip It reference once, but is that where the inspiration for your name came from?
I don't know. You're gonna have to ask that question. I don't really know. I don't think there was an inspiration, to be honest with you. Everybody has really unique names in my family. So, and here's a fun fact: we weren't actually named till like 2 years old. We were just we were just like Baby Tindall number 6 until my parents kind of figured out with
get the vibe that you're putting off.
Yeah. So. I'd like to think that Devo gives off the vibe of, I know everything. I don't know. I have no idea what it means. There is no true meaning to it.
I love it.
Well, cool. Well, thank you, Devo, so much for taking the time to visit with us today. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Good times. Good conversation. Thanks for putting the time and energy into it.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.